Welcome back to the deep dive. You guys sent in some seriously interesting articles about submarines.
Submarines.
Yeah, specifically a possible submarine showdown brewing in the Indian Ocean.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it seems like the Indian Navy, with their German-made Type 214s, could be going head-to-head against the Pakistani Navy with their Chinese-built Hangor-class subs.
That's a pretty intense matchup. German engineering versus, well, rapidly developing Chinese tech.
Right. So we're going to break down what this all means for the balance of power in the region and who knows, maybe even globally.
Sounds good.
So first off, these submarines, they're not exactly identical twins, are they?
No, not at all. I mean, just on paper, the Hangor-class is, well, it's bigger
Okay.
and faster. But then the Type 214, it can dive deeper.
So it's not just about size.
Right.
Like, is the Hangor just a big, slow, target? Or does all that extra size mean more firepower?
Well, that's where things get interesting. The size difference might actually point to different goals, strategically speaking,
Okay.
The Hangor size, it could mean more room for weapons or fuel, so it can operate further away from home. The Type 214, though, it might be all about maneuverability, and stealth, especially in the depths.
Okay, I'm starting to see the picture here. Now let's talk about this air-independent propulsion thing. All the articles are saying it's a game changer.
Oh, it is.
Because it lets these submarines stay underwater, like, way longer.
Yeah.
So why is that such a big deal in the Indian Ocean specifically?
Well, imagine trying to find a needle in a very big haystack. That's what it's like trying to find a submarine in the Indian Ocean. It's massive.
Right.
And the longer a submarine can stay hidden underwater, well, the harder it is to track.
Makes sense. So how does this air-independent propulsion, AIP, how does it actually work?
So there are different types. The Type 214 uses fuel cells for its AIP, which is a pretty advanced system. Then you've got the Hangor-class, which uses Stirling generators. It's a bit like, comparing electric cars to hybrids.
Right.
Both are, better for the environment, let's say, but one's usually more efficient.
And didn't I read somewhere that Pakistan actually wanted that German fuel cell tech?
Yeah.
But they were denied.
Yeah, they were, and that little detail adds a whole other layer to this rivalry. Pakistan had to turn to China for help, and that partnership it's blossomed big time. It's a big transfer of technology.
So it's not just about the subs themselves. It's about, like, a whole geopolitical game going on behind the scenes.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, so a sub that can stay hidden for longer is obviously a bigger threat.
Right.
But what's the advantage, strategically speaking?
Well, think of it this way. If you can't find them, you can't target them.
Right, makes sense.
A submarine with longer submersion time can patrol key areas, like for weeks, gathering intelligence, maybe waiting for the perfect moment to strike.
Okay, so that's where the whole stealth thing comes in.
Yeah.
The Type 214 sounds like it was designed to be like a ghost in the water. One article even mentioned this system where they use water to launch torpedoes silently.
Oh, yeah, it's fascinating. Instead of using compressed air, which would make a lot of noise and bubbles, they basically use a jet of water to propel the torpedo out. It makes the launch much harder to detect.
Wow. So it's like they're trying to make the sub, like, invisible to sonar.
Pretty much, yeah. And they've also put a lot of work into minimizing the sub's magnetic and acoustic signatures.
So it's all about, like, reducing their footprint, so to speak.
Oh, exactly.
Okay, sneaky. But they're not just hiding, are they? They've got some serious firepower, too. The articles mention torpedoes and even a system to, like, defend against incoming torpedoes.
Well, right. And then you have the Hangor-class, which, well, the specifics are classified, but it's believed they could carry YJ-18 supersonic anti-ship cruise missiles.
Wow, hold on. Missiles. Like, what kind of range are we talking about here?
Think over 300 miles.
300 miles. So it's like an underwater sniper that can take out ships from, like, way beyond visual range.
Basically, yeah.
So it's not just about subs fighting each other anymore. They can target surface ships from a long way off.
Exactly.
That changes the whole game, doesn't it?
Oh, for sure. It raises the stakes considerably. We're not just talking about, what's the term? Sea denial.
Right.
The Hangor-class with those missiles, it's a serious offensive capability. It can dictate the terms of engagement, force the enemy to stay further away from the coast.
And this is where it gets really interesting. One of the articles mentioned that China's newer subs have these angled sails designed for stealth. And it made me wonder, could they be planning to, like, upgrade the Hangor-class with that tech, too?
It's definitely possible. Remember, Pakistan is relying on China to build these subs initially, but the goal is to build them domestically eventually.
Right.
And they're not exactly shy about using the latest technology.
So imagine a Hangor-class sub, practically invisible to sonar, lurking hundreds of miles offshore and armed with missiles that can take out a ship from miles away.
It's a scenario that, well, I'm sure naval strategists around the world are thinking about very carefully.
Yeah. It raises a lot of questions about the future of naval warfare,
Mm-hmm.
not just in the Indian Ocean, but globally.
It does, and that's something we'll dive into in the next part.
Okay, so we're back, and I guess you could say sometimes it's what's lurking beneath the surface that's the most, well, interesting.
True.
We left off talking about how these submarines could, really shift the balance of power in the Indian Ocean.
Right.
But what does that actually mean, like in practical terms?
Well, it's not as simple as one side, just winning because they have a new submarine.
Right.
It's more like this constant back and forth. Each side is adapting to what the other one is doing.
So like a chess match.
Exactly. Two grandmasters constantly trying to outmaneuver each other. That's what's happening here.
Okay, I like that analogy. So let's bring it back to these specific subs. The Type 214, with all its stealth tech, how does it actually fit into India's overall naval strategy?
Well, it seems like the Type 214 is all about controlling key areas, like strategically important choke points,
Okay, yeah.
shipping lanes, maybe even coastal areas. The idea is that the Type 214 could basically make those zones too risky for enemy ships to operate in.
So it's not necessarily about, like, going on the offensive. It's more about controlling the board, so to speak.
Yeah, exactly. It's a defensive strategy, but a very effective one.
Because if you can't even get close, well, you can't attack, right?
Right. The ability to remain undetected for a long time, plus those torpedoes and, countermeasures, it makes the Type 214 a pretty big obstacle for any navy.
Okay, I'm seeing how that works. But then you've got the Hangor-class with those long-range missiles.
Right.
That's a whole different ballgame, isn't it?
It is. The Hangor-class is definitely leaning towards a more, offensive strategy. It's about projecting power, being able to strike from a distance.
So one is about keeping the enemy out, and the other is about hitting them before they can hit you.
You got it.
That complicates things. And this goes way beyond just India and Pakistan, doesn't it? You mentioned China earlier.
Yeah.
What role are they playing in all this?
Well, China's support for Pakistan's submarine program has been, essential. They haven't just provided the technology, They've also provided expertise to help build these submarines, and their strategic interests are very much aligned with Pakistan's, at least in that region. It's a partnership that's, it's been growing stronger for a while.
So it's almost like a proxy war, in a way. You've got these two tech giants, China and Germany, backing their respective allies in this underwater arms race.
You could see it that way, yeah.
Okay, and that brings us back to the whole nuclear question. It was pretty alarming to read about Pakistan potentially developing nuclear-capable submarines.
It is a concerning development.
So how does that fit into this whole equation? I mean, does that change everything?
It definitely adds a whole new level of complexity and risk.
Yeah.
It's something that, I'm sure it's got the attention of all of the major powers around the world.
Makes you wonder if there are any, like, international efforts to, control or limit the development of these kinds of weapons.
Oh, absolutely. There are treaties, organizations, all dedicated to preventing the spread of these weapons. And there's constant, diplomatic pressure to try to get nations to, to find peaceful solutions.
But haven't those efforts, like, failed in the past?
They have sometimes.
So how effective are they? Really, it's kind of unsettling to think about these weapons just, like, hiding out in the ocean.
I understand that concern. There's no guarantee that these efforts will always work. But that doesn't mean we should, give up on diplomacy and international cooperation. It's a constant process.
Okay, I see your point. So let's shift gears a bit. I want to go back to the Type 214 and its stealth capabilities. They've really gone all out to make this thing invisible, haven't they?
They really have. Remember that water ram torpedo launch system we talked about? That's just one part of it. They've also got these advanced coatings on the hull.
Coatings?
Yeah, they absorb sound waves, so it makes it incredibly hard for sonar to, to pick up the submarine.
Wow. And then there's the angled hull design on some of these newer subs.
Well,
It almost sounds like they're taking cues from stealth aircraft.
It's a good comparison. Those angled surfaces, they're meant to deflect sonar waves. They scatter them, so it's a lot harder for enemy sonar to get a clear picture.
So it's like an underwater cloaking device.
Well, not quite invisibility, but it's getting close.
Okay, now that's just cool. What about the Hangor-class, though? Does it have any comparable stealth features?
It's harder to say for sure since, the details are more classified.
Right.
But we know that China has been making some serious progress in submarine stealth tech. The Hangor-class probably has some level of noise reduction, signature management.
Okay.
But it's probably not as advanced as the Type 214, at least not yet.
But what about that article, the one about the Chinese sub with the angled sail?
Yeah.
Could they be planning to, upgrade the Hangor-class with that?
They could. And if they did, well, that would make a huge difference in the Hangor stealth capabilities, make it an even tougher opponent.
Okay, something to keep an eye on then. We've covered a lot of ground here. From the specific submarine tech to the bigger geopolitical picture.
Yeah.
But, these aren't just robots we're talking about. There are people operating these complex machines.
You're absolutely right. That's something people often overlook. We can talk about all the technology, but ultimately it's the submariners, the men and women who operate these vessels who really make the difference.
So it's not just about having the best tech. It's about having the best trained crews, too.
Exactly. The skill, the experience, the decision-making of the crew, all of that is crucial. Think about the pressure these submariners are under, operating in a confined and potentially dangerous environment.
Yeah, like for weeks at a time. It must be intense.
It is. Submarine warfare requires a very particular set of skills, technical expertise, of course, but also psychological resilience and teamwork. It's really a team effort.
And then there's the isolation factor.
Right.
Weeks, maybe even months underwater, cut off from the outside world. I can't even imagine.
The psychological demands are, they're immense. Confined to a small space, working closely together, constant pressure. It takes a lot of camaraderie, trust, and discipline to function effectively in that kind of environment.
It really makes you appreciate the human side of all of this.
It does.
It's easy to get caught up in the tech specs and the geopolitical stuff, but these are real people making life or death decisions hundreds of feet below the surface. It's incredible.
It is.
It makes you wonder about the future, though. Like, could we see a day when AI takes over? Unmanned submarines patrolling the oceans.
It's a question a lot of people are asking. Unmanned underwater vehicles, UUVs, they're already being used for things like mine detection, surveillance.
Okay.
And as AI and automation get, more advanced, it's not hard to imagine a future where submarines are operated remotely or even autonomously.
So robot subs could be a reality soon. That's both fascinating and kind of scary at the same time.
It is.
What would that mean for the future of naval warfare?
That's the big question, and it's a tough one. There are so many ethical and legal implications to consider when we're talking about autonomous weapon systems.
Yeah, who's responsible if an AI-controlled sub makes a mistake?
Exactly. And what are the rules of engagement? These are questions we need to be thinking about now before the technology, gets too far ahead of us.
So it's not just a hypothetical problem for the future. It's something we need to address now.
Absolutely. These technological advances are happening so fast, it's crucial to have these conversations now so we can develop, ethical guidelines, international agreements, make sure these technologies are used responsibly.
Okay, I see the urgency. And aside from the AI aspect, what other kinds of innovations do you think we might see in submarine warfare? Any predictions?
Well, stealth technology will probably keep advancing. We could see subs that are even quieter, even harder to detect. Imagine submarines that can essentially blend in with the background noise of the ocean.
So basically invisible to sonar.
Essentially, yeah.
Okay, now we're talking invisible subs. What else?
Another area where we could see big advancements is propulsion systems.
Okay.
We could have subs that are faster, more maneuverable, able to operate for much longer periods without refueling.
So they're going to become even more like super advanced underwater predators.
In a way, yes. But it's important to remember that these technologies are, they're tools. How they're used depends on the people who have them.
Right.
Ultimately, the future of submarine warfare isn't just about technology. It's about the choices we make as a global community.
And we're back for the final part of our deep dive. We were talking about the submariners themselves, the people who actually operate these machines. What's the training like for them?
Well, it's definitely not easy. They go through years of training, not just for the technical side of things, operating these incredibly complex systems, but also for the psychological challenges. Living and working in that kind of environment, well, it's not for everyone.
Yeah, weeks, maybe even months underwater,
Yeah.
cut off from the world. It must take incredible mental strength.
Oh, it does. And teamwork is absolutely key.
Right, because in a submarine, one mistake could be disastrous.
Exactly. Every single person on that crew has a vital role to play. They have to depend on each other completely. It's a very high pressure environment, and they need to be constantly alert, think fast, and really understand not just the technology, but the tactics too.
It really puts things in perspective, doesn't it? We get so focused on the technology and the global politics, but it's the submariners who are on the front lines, literally making life or death decisions, hundreds of feet underwater.
Yeah, it's a humbling thought. These submarines, we talk about them as weapons, but they're also carrying human beings, people with families, dreams, lives outside of that steel tube.
Okay, so we've talked about the present, the current rivalry, and the human side of things.
Yeah.
But what about the future? We were getting into some pretty sci-fi territory earlier, talking about AI-controlled submarines. Could that actually happen, say, in the next decade or so?
It's definitely possible. I mean, the technology is moving so quickly. We already have unmanned underwater vehicles doing things like surveillance and mine detection. So, you know, the question isn't really if it's possible, but when it will become, well, the norm and what that will mean.
Yeah, the ethical and strategic implications, right?
Exactly.
It's kind of hard to wrap my head around it. Like these subs basically being robots, making decisions about, who to target, when to attack. That's both amazing and a little terrifying.
I get that. It's a really complex issue, and there are no easy answers. Like, who?
I'm with you there. Okay, so besides the whole AI thing, what other kinds of tech advancements do you think we might see in submarine warfare? Got any predictions?
Well, for one, stealth technology is probably going to keep getting better. We could see submarines that are even quieter, even harder to find. I mean, imagine a submarine that could blend in with the natural sounds of the ocean.
So basically, invisible to sonar.
Pretty much.
Wow. We've gone from stealthy underwater snipers to, like, silent, invisible ghosts in the ocean. That's incredible. What else?
Well, there's propulsion. We could see submarines that are faster, more maneuverable, and can go longer without having to refuel.
So they're going to be even more like, well, like super advanced underwater predators.
It's true, yeah. But we have to remember that these technologies, they're just tools, right? How they're used depends on, well, on the people who control them. It all comes back to human decisions.
It's a sobering thought. So big picture, we've covered a lot in this deep dive. Everything from like the nuts and bolts of the technology to the broader impact on, well, global security. Any final thoughts for our listeners out there?
Well, I think the key thing to remember is that this rivalry, this arms race between India and Pakistan, it's just a small part of a much bigger story. It's about power shifting, technology changing at an unbelievable pace, and the constant challenge of trying to keep peace in a very complicated world.
Well said. We've gone from submarine specs to like the future of warfare and everything in between. It's been a wild ride.
It really has.
For everyone listening, thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Hopefully you've got a new perspective on well, the world beneath the waves. It's a world of secrets and strategy and human ingenuity, and it's changing all the time. Keep those brains curious, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.